If you keep going back to toxic people and you don't seem to be able to change it, I want you to know that this isn't about willpower. It's about neuroscience. Let me explain why your brain is wired this way. Okay, hey, this is Francisca and this is Mummy Crisis Life, and today is Monday Mindset. So yesterday in Crisis Confessionals, I was talking a little bit about how toxic relationships are formed, and how there's often a cycle of repeated dynamics within relationships that were formed very early on in our childhood, and that often we encounter or go back to or persist in relationships that mirror those early dynamics because we are trying to fix them within a different relationship. We're trying to heal that fracture within a different relationship, particularly if we can't heal the relationship that created these dynamics in the first place. All right. So today I just wanted to talk a little bit about, expand a little bit more on that. Why do we go back? Why do we stay in these cycles? I think a lot of it is about habit. And when I say habit, I don't mean like, oh, it's just something that you do, it's just a habit. Habits are really deeply, deeply ingrained behaviors that ultimately we have really no control over, that come from our basal ganglia, which is like the deepest, earliest formed part of our brain. And they are set ways of doing things. They are set ways of behaving that we have a trigger, and then that trigger creates a particular routine, and then that routine ends with some kind of reward. And the reward doesn't necessarily mean like candy or flowers or chocolate or whatever, a holiday. Sometimes the reward is something more negative. Sometimes the reward is, I don't know, that we get to feel pain because we're addicted to that pain, because it's the only thing that makes us feel like it's all worth it. Like, for example, I know like one of my exes, I used to really subconsciously like it when he cheated on me because after he cheated and I found out, it gave me like, I don't know, it made me feel electrified. It made me feel alive to watch him beg and plead. And it gave me power as well. So sometimes our rewards are something like that, right? So if you think about habits in that way, rather than just something that you do, then you begin to understand maybe why it is that you can't stop, why we can't stop, why I can't stop doing certain things, even when they're really unhealthy for us. Because here's what happens, right? When we're little kids, our main purpose, our main focus is to survive. And when you're little, you're very reliant on the people around you in order to be able to survive, to have shelter, to be fed, to be warm, to just basically have our basic needs met, right? If you learn that the way that you have to survive is by doing things that are not authentic to you, then what happens is that those things become a habit. And then that habit begins to feel like the authentic you when it's not. It's a choice that you made, albeit in a very difficult situation, albeit because you were trying to survive, and albeit as a 2-year-old or a 1-year-old or a 4-year-old who had no awareness of anything else in the world and had no context of what was going on outside of them, and literally was just making this decision with the most finite amount of information that they possibly could. But irrespective, it was a choice, right? And we make these choices and then we forget that we ever made them. And then we just live our entire lives like this is who we are. But it's not. It's a character. It's a caricature, really, of the real you that came out of a state of survival. And if you're lucky and you had responsive and sensitive parents, if you had parents who were well-adjusted themselves and you ended up having a secure attachment, then likely the decisions that you made about who you need to be and how you need to show up in order to survive, they probably aren't going to be that different from your authentic self. There are still going to be things that happened, like your brother wouldn't take you with him when he went and played with his friends, or your mum left you at the supermarket at that time, even though she really loves you, just like, baby brain or whatever. Or, I don't know, like you fell off the swing and you hurt your knee. And these are all decisions that are going to affect how you survive, right? But the more unhealthy that those early relationships are, the more severe your survival instincts and your survival decisions are. So what happens is that when we're younger, our brain is firing on all cylinders. So all of the electrodes or whatever they are in our brain, right, they're all lit all the time because we're taking in so much information. But as we learn that process of trigger, routine, reward, yeah, i.e. if I sit down and shut up and don't bother mom, yeah, when I'm hungry, yeah, there's a trigger. I'm hungry, but I've learned that the routine is to sit down quietly, yeah, because if I ask for food, I'm going to get beaten up. And the reward is that I don't get beaten up. Great. So you form these neurological pathways, and the older we get, the more set our neurological pathways get. We also have this thing called gating, where when we're younger, if you imagine the gates of our brain
are wide open, and we're taking in all of this information. And to be honest, it's overstimulating. So as we grow up, we learn to be able to sit and read while the TV's on, while someone's talking, while they're lawn mowing outside, there's traffic, people are bibbing, there's an argument going over there, but we can focus our attention on this one thing. But the same thing happens in terms of gating, in terms of the amount of information that we allow ourselves to take in and assess. So therefore, we end up in these patterns, in these habits, in these neurological pathways where we're doing exactly the same thing. So that all sounds pretty fixed and rigid, right? But we know that the brain has neuroplasticity, so we know that it can change, it can grow, it can learn all the way to the end of our lives. Now, we used to think that neuroplasticity ended around 24 and that the brain was pretty much set, but actually it's not, right? So we can always change these things. I think, though, in order for it to be done, there needs to be something that's forceful enough for us to make that decision. So I think it was Newton, right? Newton, who said that something will continue on the same trajectory unless an outside force of equal velocity hits that thing, and then it will change trajectory. And I think that these habits and these behaviors are the same way. I think it's the same thing, right? There has to be something outside of yourself or something within yourself that has to happen that is big enough, that creates enough leverage for us to be able to say, right, these things have to change. Yeah. And I think that can be so many different things. And I'm not going to tell everybody else what that catalyst, what that leverage is, right? Because for some people, they don't need a lot of leverage to get out of an unhealthy relationship. For some people, they really, really do, right? And that's not about being better or worse than anyone else. That's just where you're at. But I also think that once you make that first decision, you probably do need a lot of leverage. There probably does need to be a really strong opposing force to come and hit that trajectory, hit that thing out of trajectory. But I also think that once you do it the first time, the more and more and more that you do it, the less leverage you need in order to make a decision that is not about survival, that's about who you are authentically. And I just want people, everyone, to look at these opportunities, right? And find some in their life. So it's like wherever there's a moment of joy, real elation, and your heart opens up, that's an opportunity. Whenever there's a moment of real pain, of real dejection, when your heart breaks, that is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to reset that code if you don't ignore it. And that's why I talk so much about truth. I don't talk about people being happy or, this fucking toxic positivity shit. I talk about truth because your truth is your opportunity. And if you avoid it, if you deny it, if you distort it, then you're never going to see it, and you're never going to find the leverage, and you're never going to find that thing that's going to hit you hard enough to change the trajectory of these ingrained patterns in your life. Okay, I think that's it. Come back tomorrow for Chrysalis Tools. We're going to start looking at how we can look for those opportunities. So hopefully that will be something interesting for you guys to watch. And yeah, that's it.
Okay, so tell me, what survival pattern are you ready to break? Because tomorrow's Chrysalis Tools will show you how to find those breakthrough moments. And as always, subscribe for more psychology that actually makes sense.